What if a woman told you she feared she would be killed and no one listened? In the mid-1980s, along the streets of San Diego, women moved through a world shaped by survival, addiction, police surveillance, and quiet arrangements that they rarely made it into public view. One of those women was Donna Gentile. Before she died, Donna recorded a message. In it, she made something clear. If anything happened to her, it would not be by her own hand. Months later, another woman would disappear. She knew Donna. She trusted some of the same people. And like Donna, she had spent time helping the police. Her name was Cynthia Maine. Their stories begin in different places, but they lead to the same question. What happens when the people meant to protect you become part of what you fear? This is their story.
Hi, I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Amy.
And you're listening to She Goes by Jane. At the end of this episode and every episode, we will be joined by a special guest who will read an original poem by Amy Baker about the women we're featuring.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Amy.
Vanessa, as you know, I have recently tried to join the world of TikTok.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you have.
Yes.
And how's that doing for you? I'm
awkward in person and on camera.
Are you having TikTok nightmares?
I am. I'm not a natural in the social media space, but I am trying to social media more for She Goes by Jane because our goal is to get these stories out there, and that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
And to be able to keep getting them out there.
Yes, so that people keep hearing the names, keep hearing the stories, so that we can drive more energy around efforts to find them, efforts to solve these cases, but also in like remembering who these people were, remembering their names, remembering their stories. Yeah.
Yes.
So I was actually thinking as I was working on this episode, which is actually part of a 3-part series. They're all connected, but they're kind of, you could watch them or listen to them individually, right? Okay. I was like thinking about this because I realized as I was writing this that like I'm not actually sure how I will actually be able to talk about this case on TikTok because TikTok limits you being able to actually talk about certain things.
Oh, yes.
And so you know that we're talking about sex workers.
Yes.
People who are sex workers in this episode.
Right. And I think that's why people have the little words to get around it.
Yeah. And I just was thinking like
schmacks.
Yes. Or segs.
Segs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might have to do something like that.
Yeah. And I was just thinking like what we're continuing to do a disservice to people like by not being able to just talk about what happened to these women.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure why it's gone to that, but I've seen some pretty like creative lengths online for people to try to skirt around it because they have no choice.
Right.
But like, why are we not open with these things?
Yeah. So anyway, to sort of set us up, I'm glad everyone's listening. We have a bunch of new listeners. Welcome.
That's amazing. Thank you for being here.
We are going to be doing this 3-part series because I had never heard of these cases before or what was happening in San Diego in the 1980s. And I'm just incredibly saddened that this isn't part of a greater conversation. So you can listen to them all one after another. You can listen to them individually. They stand alone. But that's what we're going to get into today.
Okay.
So, Vanessa, I'm going to start quite unusually with a quote. In case I disappear, I want my lawyer to give this to the press. I have no intention of disappearing or going out of town without letting my lawyer know first. Because of the publicity I have given a police scandal, this is the reason why I'm making this. Donna Gentile said into a tape recorder. The 22-year-old was sitting inside a Las Colinas women's jail on a 90-day sentence after being convicted of soliciting for sex work, and she believed her life was in danger. After recording, she wrote a letter. The letter detailed her connection to a member of the San Diego police force named Larry Averick, the same man she'd recently reported for sexual extortion and harassment. But before she took the tape out of the recorder, she added one more statement, rendering her words permanent. I feel someone in a uniform with a badge can still be a serious criminal. Less than 4 months later, Donna Gentile would be dead.
Wow. So she's just 22 and really putting some thought into the way that she might disappear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She was well aware of the precariousness of her situation.
Yeah, I can't begin to think about how that would feel.
Being 22 years old.
And completely helpless to the fact that you probably will have something horrible happen to you.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the 1980s, under the neon lights of El Cajon Boulevard in San Diego, women worked the street selling sex. It was a known issue in the city. Men would pull up, lining the streets with their vehicles, and women would hop in, returning to their posts shortly after. Sometimes they'd go to a by-the-hour motel, but more often than not, the exchanges were quicker than that. Those are called car dates, I have now learned.
Oh, okay.
The San Diego police patrolled the area regularly. Often their policing was one of low-level harassment, like citing the women for minor infractions. It's enough of an inconvenience that it would temper the amount of workers out on El Cajon, but sometimes it was full-scale sweeps arresting women for prostitution. The possibility of arrest was always a concern for the women on El Cajon, as was the fear of encountering an abusive or violent client. But those fears deepened starting in 1985 when women began disappearing. First one, then another, and another. There seemed to be no end in sight. Most of these women knew each other. A lot of them were friends. When someone disappeared, they'd hear about it. Sometimes the women would be found days later along some stretch of highway, murdered. Sometimes they'd simply vanish. Richard Serrano, a reporter for the Los Angeles Times, spoke to some of the women in 1987. Most of them talked about protecting themselves or gave their theories on who was taking their friends. One of the women, Melanie, said, 3 or 4 months ago, I thought this one dude I met was going to be cool. But after I got into his car, he pulled out his knife. It was so big. So I went along. I didn't fight back. I showed fear. I made sure he was real pleased because that's the only way you're going to make it. I asked him later why he didn't kill me. He said he liked my attitude.
So he liked that she was scared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another woman, who went by the name Patches, said, nowadays, before I get in a car, I talk to them to see what frame of mind they're in. I ask about their lives, what kind of work they do, and if they have kids or a wife. I try to make sure they feel as vulnerable out here as I do. But even with taking precautions, the women of El Cajon were at risk. And the first to go missing was Donna Gentile. Donna Gentile's story isn't just about what happened to her, it's a window into what was happening into San Diego at the time. By the time she arrived there in the early 1980s, Donna had already been on her own for years. She'd run away from her home in Philadelphia at just 15. And by 18, she was surviving on the streets, working along El Cajon Boulevard, moving through a world shaped by instability, addiction, and constant risk. But even then, her life wasn't without direction. She talked about wanting something different. At one point, even telling a police officer that she was interested in law enforcement. That officer was Larry Averick. He's relatively new to the San Diego Police Department when they met in 1981, and Donna was still a teenager. He offered her a ride along, something that, on the surface, might have looked like an opportunity for her. According to Donna, it ended up somewhere else entirely. She said he drove her to a residence where they had sex. Averick would later claim he didn't know she was a sex worker.
So he didn't know that, so he was just trying to take advantage of a teenager?
Right, what's the alternative?
What's the alternative? Either way, it's not good for him.
Right? If not...
Then what do you think you're doing?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever the nature of that first encounter, it didn't mark the end of her contact with law enforcement. It marked the beginning of something much more complicated. Over the next few years, Donna cycled in and out of arrests tied to prostitution. The threat of being picked up was constant, but so was something else, the understanding that arrests didn't always happen the same way for everyone. There were arrangements, both informal ones, unspoken ones, so favors could be exchanged for information, access, sometimes sex. It was known practice for the women of El Cajon. For a time, Donna tried to step outside of this world. She took a job as a security guard and started a relationship with her supervisor. But when that relationship fell apart, the options narrowed again. She returned to El Cajon Boulevard and to the same systems she had been navigating before. By 1984, she's facing more charges. This time, she actually pushes back. She said there'd been an understanding that she would be, quote, helped out in exchange for cooperation. It's a claim that exposed something deeper. The lines between enforcement and exploitation weren't always clear. And in Donna's case, it's about to disappear entirely. Later that year, she encountered Averick again. This time, she said the expectation was explicit. He approached her for sex during a vice operation, offering leniency in return. Given her recent arrests, she didn't feel she had much of a choice. Now, over the course of that summer, she said they had sex multiple times. But Averick wasn't the only officer in her orbit. There was also Lieutenant Carl Black. Where Averick's presence in her life was tied to pressure and control, Black's had a different texture to it, I would say, at least on the surface. He treated me real nice, she said, like a friend, never like a prostitute.
Was their relationship sexual?
It does not appear to be. So I didn't encounter information that kind of elucidates this.
So he's just being nice.
Right.
Okay. Genuinely, though?
I mean, I think still in a way that I would term as exploitative. I'm not sure how Donna felt about it, though.
Okay. But not sexual.
Right.
Okay.
Now, there's this distinction between how he's treating her and how she's being treated by other members of the force, right? Mm-hmm. And it made what followed feel, at least briefly, like something else entirely. So that June, Black invited Donna on a trip to Colorado with him, his girlfriend, and some other members of the department. Donna began to believe that Black truly did care about her. Now, this is kind of the detail that feels almost surreal in retrospect. So you have a young woman who's moving between arrest records and ride-alongs, between exploitation and something that looked, for a moment, like belonging, right? Mm-hmm. But whatever kind of hope Donna had about how she could be treated, about how she could start to navigate the world, those were quickly crushed. When Donna told Averick about the trip after she returned, tensions between them escalated. He didn't seem happy about it, and he did say he was going to start investigating Black.
But why are we investigating Black?
So, Donna, at this point, has an arrest record, and she is a known sex worker.
Right.
Bringing her along with a group of police members.
Yeah.
Does violate some standards, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So bringing her on a trip violates standards, but Averick having sex with her doesn't.
Yeah. I mean,
to be clear, it's better to do that than to be nice to her?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. So we have some, double standards operating.
So now we're investigating him for being inclusive.
Yeah.
In a way that is actually probably also inappropriate, but not as inappropriate as...
Yeah. So what Black is doing is pretty inappropriate. Also, what Averick is doing is inappropriate.
Like, really, really inappropriate.
So then you've got Donna, who's just caught in this, like, being like, I don't know, guys.
Well, I mean, she doesn't probably. It's probably very confusing.
And she's still so young. To emphasize this. So by August, she formally reports Averick to his supervisor and accuses him of harassment and extortion. She said he had written to a judge on her behalf in connection to one of the standing prostitution charges she was facing. And then he demanded sex from her in return.
So Averick wants to investigate Black, but now she's just turned that around a little bit and is trying to get Averick investigated instead because he's the one who's been trying to have sex with her.
Right.
Okay.
And so she is essentially, I think, in some ways trying to protect Black.
Yes.
And in other ways also trying to point out that Averick is trying to leverage his positions and the things that he does for her in exchange for sex.
Right.
So he had written her a letter to the judge asking for leniency in her prostitution case, right? But then also said, hey, I did this for you. Now you can do something for me.
Mm-hmm.
And she says when she refused, the pressure on her intensified. So by August, she was ready to break. And that's when she brought her concerns to Averick's supervisor. Now, the Vice unit had already been under scrutiny for the past ways that officers had interacted with sex workers. So they made Donna an offer. If she agreed to become an internal affairs informant, basically if she cooperated, they would help her with her charges. Mm-hmm. Though in what way, they didn't actually make clear how they were going to help her with those charges.
Okay.
So she agreed. So now she's working as an informant for internal affairs to investigate what's going on with Averick.
Okay. While still maintaining a relationship with Averick? Or at this point, is that all over?
Well, so part of it would have to be like not letting him know that you're an informant.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So by the following spring, both Averick and Black are under investigation. Black was suspended for his involvement in the trip. So, see, quite serious.
Mm-hmm.
But Averick did face more serious consequences, the potential loss of his job specifically. Mm-hmm. On paper, it might have looked like a turning point, like some sort of accountability for what had been happening to Donna, right? But for Donna, this does not feel like a win. It made her feel more exposed than she ever had before.
Why was that?
Well, so now she's put herself at risk, right?
Okay.
Like, both of them are going to know that she was part of this investigation. There's no way to hide it.
There's no way to hide it anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, like, what kind of protection is she being offered by the police department, in internal affairs? They said they were going to help her out, but, like, what does that mean?
Right.
So what Donna doesn't know is that by serving as an informant for both the Vice team and internal affairs, she was actually stepping into a very complicated arrangement. And it's one marked by tensions between sex workers, the police, politicians, business owners, and the community. So, like, there's just a lot of history going on here. And I think, like, Donna is starting to fully realize, like, what she's gotten herself into. Now, the landscape of sex work in San Diego was rapidly changing, and the women were at the mercy of external forces beyond their control. So when Donna had first arrived in San Diego as a young teenager, she had likely known El Cajon Boulevard, but not what drove sex workers to that strip in the first place. And understanding this history is vitally important to understanding what's going on with Donna and what's going on with this whole story.
Okay.
Now, the city has a complicated past in dressing sex work. El Cajon Boulevard and the surrounding areas had been the center point for sex work for a while. But a decade before, sex work had largely been confined to, you can't see my quotes, but they're there, massage parlors. It's like
the air quotes are there.
Yeah, because I feel bad for actually, like, masseuses who...
Right, people who, yeah. The normal therapeutic kind.
Right.
Yes, okay. Yes.
So these businesses offered not just traditional massage, but also things that definitely do not fit under the umbrella of therapeutic or medical massage.
Right.
Now, these parlors had to be registered with the police department and included a number of regulations that included rules about cleanliness, pricing, and more. Some of those services that they offered did include services of a sexual nature, but there were some boundaries about what could be offered and what couldn't. These parlors were regularly checked in on by police as part of their licensing, and there were numerous ways the businesses could face infractions, like risking their business. They always wanted to be, like, on the up and up when the police were coming by. Mm-hmm. But even with this system in place, city officials wanted a tighter rein on the industry because they feared, like, the prevalence of these businesses like this in the city just made it look bad. First, they outlawed some of the more salacious offerings at the parlors.
Whatever that is.
So basically, they offered quite a range of things.
You got very awkward when I just said whatever that is. You can't see it, but Amy did a full pause. Like, don't ask. We won't get into it.
Okay.
Yeah. We can just
move
along.
But basically, like, a lot of things, but not penetrative sex.
Okay.
That is, like,
No.
That's a no.
Okay.
Okay. And that's important to know. Now, next, San Diego police officers started to use undercover cops to more fully police these businesses. Because if it could be proven that the parlors were simply offering as a front for straight up sale of sex, their license to operate as a business could be revoked as well. To do this, there needed to be 3 distinct and separate offers for sex from those involved in the business to an undercover officer.
Okay, so they had to offer it 3 times?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like clear that the intention is to sell sex.
Okay.
Right? Not like, so you need to like build up some evidence. So it can't be just like, oh no, he misheard me, or like that kind of thing. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking a lot here about the ways that the sex workers are getting arrested.
Yes.
What about the men?
Oh, the men who use services.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for the most part, in the kind of the history of approaches to policing sex work, for the most part, it's always been the providers of the sex who have been most heavily policed, not the people seeking it.
But for each provider of services, there are many, many users of the service. So why, if we could take away that layer,
yeah,
there'd be no need for the other layer.
Right. But, you know, again, it puts this on primarily women and other marginalized members of the community. Like, they end up being the ones policed.
Because if we're talking about any other illegal trade, aren't both parties penalized usually?
Yeah, but no. So, I mean,
Okay.
San Diego at some point does switch to kind of deciding that they're going to actually have to go after users more often.
In this frame of mind, it would be perfectly legal for me to buy illegal drugs on the street.
Right.
I wouldn't get in trouble for it, but the person who sold it to me will get in trouble.
Right. So, like, in this right now, so, like, primarily at risk with the system, with the massage parlors, are obviously the women, right?
Right.
But also the businesses. So the businesses are like, we need to, like, make sure everything is, like, going smoothly. So this system in which you're sending undercover officers to massage parlors to interact with the women who are working there, you're basically increasing the amount of contact between the officers and these women.
Right. And I mean, with the way the rest of the story has started, I'm like, okay, so they would solicit 3 times and then the officer would be like, okay. Well, instead of actually doing his job, he'd be doing that.
Right. So bear with me here, Vanessa.
I'm losing all faith in, like,
everything.
What's happening here.
Basically, like, what you have is a vice squad who's going to become well familiar with the workers, right? Now, there are also some guidelines that they have at the time. They want to rotate police through vice on a regular basis, and they say this so that they wouldn't become, as they claim, numb or complacent about the work they were doing.
Doesn't that seem very, very strange?
It does, because I was like, okay, so, like, how numb and complacent can you necessarily become in vice?
It's
like,
not. It's because they're afraid of them making relationships with the workers.
Right.
That's all it comes down to.
Exactly.
Like, they can't even trust their own men to not do this.
Right. And then you add in this layer that those in vice would generally only serve like 18 months in vice before moving on. And this creates another issue, which I'm assuming, which is that a good number of the police force would have at some point served in vice.
Right.
So if there's some sort of developed perspective of sex work or how you treat sex workers or how you perceive them, well, then you'd have a good number of your police force who might have had the opportunity to adopt that kind of perspective, right?
Right. And I'm not saying like all officers would be like, yeah, let's do this. But I'm saying there's a number of them.
Okay, so like what we're talking about
because
is
that's
like,
been a debate lately, the not all men thing.
Yeah, like is there...
Obviously not all men when we say stuff like this.
But also all men.
But some of them, sure.
Now, what we're worried about here, or what I would be concerned about, is a developing culture about how sex workers are treated and how this wouldn't just be confined to vice, but say a whole force, right?
Right.
Now, One of the common practices that also develops at this time is that when police discovered a woman selling sexual services, they would offer her to become an informant instead. Because while the police were, yes, there to curb sex work, the reality is it's a pretty low-level crime. And so having informants who could report on bigger crimes was, they thought, more important. And a lot of women took them up on that offer. Now, the crackdown on the massage parlors is seen as successful because the parlors begin to close and police received a lot of praise for this, for like cleaning up the city, right? But the reality is that the business simply shifted. Many closed their storefronts and started taking out calls where men would call a number looking for a sex worker and she would go and meet him. And in 1983, a huge scandal erupts in the San Diego Police Department. One of their own, Sergeant Robert Hannibal, who was a longtime veteran of Vice, was caught operating his own outcall business. So this is right around the time that Donna is working in this area.
Is that around the time she's being kind of like an informant too?
So this is just before.
Just before that. Okay.
Yeah. This scandal is of epic proportions, right? But it also explains that why when Donna comes forward and says that a member of the police force is abusing his position, they're more cautious about what's happening. Mm-hmm. It also highlights that despite everyone patting themselves on the back for greatly reducing the massage parlors, sex work was just still happening in the city. It's just more decentralized. And with that, law enforcement actually had to switch their tactics again. So they needed to target the outcall businesses. And once again, sex workers adapted. So eventually, this moves the women to working on the street, specifically along El Cajon Boulevard. And local community members were upset about this. In one interview, a mom was talking about how in the mornings her children were sharing a bus stop with sex workers. The Vice Squad tried to crack down on this, but it was largely considered a losing battle. They'd arrest the women, and for the most part, they'd be locked up for a few hours before heading back out to work. But sometimes, like in Donna's case, they'd be facing a longer jail sentence. Donna felt like she had done her part. She'd been an informant by specifically helping out internal affairs, and yet there she sat, stuck in a Las Colinas jail cell, dreading when she'd be let out. Because instead of leaving and finding her way back to El Cajon, Donna would leave jail as a known snitch.
And that's when she did all those recordings?
Yeah. Because Donna, even though she's 22, right, she is street savvy. And more than that, she is a survivor. She has spent 7 years of living on her own and had taught her a lot about this corner of the world, which is why, sitting in that jail, she picks up that tape recorder and records her statement. If something happened to her, the world needed to know that someone had done something to her. So gathering the tape and her letter, she handed them over to her attorney, who was one of the few people she could now trust. Because, make no mistake, Donna is in deep. Black had been temporarily suspended. Averick's civil service hearing is looming. But Donna had gone one step further. She had also accused 7 other members of the force with harassment.
We'll be back in a moment.
She said that these 7 members of the force were constantly citing her for minor infractions like parking too close to the curb or throwing her cigarette on the ground. And sometimes she'd be stopped several times in the same day.
Okay, so they really were just harassing her.
Yes. So, based on my understanding of a lot of approaches to policing to sex work, like this is often considered a common practice.
Okay. It's like bullying.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting because like I had written about, for my newsletter Girl Hunt, a sex worker named Minnie Bradley back at the turn of the century in Nebraska. And she faced the same thing. Like, she was not getting arrested for sex work all the time. Like, she was getting arrested for, like, low-level offenses. And it's, like, a level of harassment.
Yeah.
Yeah. That you're being constantly monitored.
Because, like, parking too close to a curb?
Yeah.
Come on.
Right? Now, while this case is pending, Averick's hearing, meanwhile, is starting to move forward. And Donna is let out to testify as a witness. Also serving as a witness is his supervisor, who's the same man that Donna had made the original complaint to. Like, he's the guy she went to. But instead of taking her side, he was there on Averick's behalf.
But
yeah,
wasn't he before on her side?
How did this end up happening?
Right.
He goes ahead and says that Donna was, in his words, a troublemaker and known complainer.
Okay, so she's a complainer, so he's going to flip sides?
Yeah.
Oh.
So he's protecting one of his own.
Okay.
And he chalked up her complaints to, quote, she didn't like the idea that we weren't allowing her to work. But again, the core of Donna's original complaint about him had been about sexual misconduct.
Right.
And the police chief at the time, Bergreen, he says these complaints could not be substantiated. Essentially, his word is taken over hers.
Which happens.
Yeah. So instead, this ends up being about his violation of department policies. So not his exploitation of Donna, but failure to maintain department or follow department policies. Namely, that he had an inappropriate personal relationship with her, that he provided her with confidential information, and that he tried to influence a judge on her behalf.
Not that he was like forcing her to have sex in exchange for...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they said, oh, well, her word against his.
And of course his wins.
Yes, because, she's a known complainer. She's a problem.
And she's a woman.
Yeah. Now, Donna, this ends up just not...
It's not what she wanted.
No.
No.
Now, less than 2 weeks later, Donna disappeared. Many didn't even have time to register the fact that Donna was missing before her body was found off Sunset Highway about 40 miles north of the city. It was June 23rd, and she'd only been dead for about a day when her body was found. Her body had been hidden in a ravine. The violence Donna experienced was extensive. Her dress had been cut off, and the deputy coroner said that she'd been beaten around the head and strangled, neither of which caused her death. Her attacker, whoever it was, had filled Donna's mouth and throat with gravel, so she died by asphyxiation, aspirating on the debris.
Now, we talk about a lot of really terrible things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different level of, terrible. There's been some really sick things that people have thought to do, but this is up there as one of the worst that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's, alive when that's happening.
Yes.
It's gravel.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah.
The aspiration part makes it very clear that she was alive as it happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and the other thing, too, is we don't normally go through a whole thing resulting in, because a lot of the people we talk about are missing.
Yes.
So there's always this mystery to it on one end or the other, if they're missing or unidentified. But on this one, we know for sure this was what happened to Donna.
Yes.
And I don't know what about that feels unsettling, but
it's definitely heavier. I have been working on this series of stories for weeks, and our listeners don't get to kind of see what's happening behind the scenes, but basically we actually have had to put off recording for a few weeks because I was in this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's been deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, because Donna's body was found so far from the city, it's not the city PD that handled her murder case. Instead, the San Diego Sheriff's Department was in charge, and a specific man whose name you're going to need to remember long term, Thomas Streed, takes over. He is recognized as one of their best homicide detectives. Streed had questions about Donna's murder from the beginning. At the scene, tire tracks and footprints at the location, they'd had been carefully brushed away.
Okay.
With some branches.
Okay.
And so it was an act that he thought indicated some knowledge of evidence collection.
Okay, so we're remembering his name because he's doing well. Is that why?
Well, he is locked in. He is like, something has happened.
Okay, normally
here.
when you're like, take note of this name, it's not for a good reason.
Right.
But this one is actually, it seems, a positive note.
You're like,
Yes.
let's do this, right?
Right.
Yeah, so her body had been concealed, which is something atypical for murders that he had seen involving sex workers. What he had seen most often was that when sex workers were murdered, their bodies would be kind of dumped rather recklessly rather than concealed. But it was an incident directly following the discovery of Donna's body that made him question everything. Street was approached by a San Diego police officer who asked him if he, quote, knew who he had back there, and that following up on Donna's murder would, quote, be the end of his career.
Oh, whoa. Okay. Huh. Okay.
Yeah, so this is a threat he takes pretty seriously, but it doesn't dissuade him for looking for the truth.
Okay, so he didn't stop there?
No, he was like, ruin my career. Dude, do you know who I am? Is probably what he was thinking.
Okay. Well, and I mean, with the, like, we were talking about how horrible this is. Like, anybody with half a heart should realize that Donna's case needs attention.
Yeah.
It's just...
So, while all this is happening, back on El Cajon Boulevard, women were disappearing.
Women?
Women, plural, yes. Some vanished for days before anyone noticed, and others were found quickly, left in dumpsters, alleyways, sides of the road. Bodies discovered by sanitation workers, passerbys, people simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. By the end of 1985, Donna was no longer an isolated case. 4 other women had been killed.
All sex workers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And when the calendar year turns to a new year, the violence doesn't stop. It's just the first 2 months of 1986, more women disappeared. Some would be found murdered. One would not. But she vanished from the same streets. She knew Donna, and like Donna, she had spent time helping the police. Her name was Cynthia Maine.
Has Cynthia ever been found?
Cynthia has not been found.
Okay.
So, as a podcast that focuses on missing and unidentified women, Donna's story is actually unusual for us to cover. But to understand Cynthia's story,
we need Donna.
Yeah, it's all in context.
Yeah.
Though the last few months of Donna and Cynthia's life were close mirrors of one another. Their early childhoods couldn't have been more different. Cynthia grew up in California, one of 3 children, and their mother worked at a local donut shop part-time. Her father was a motorcycle cop, and there were always cops in and out of their house, visiting, having parties. It was just part of their life. They spent their childhood going on vacations to the desert or camping. It was kind of a typical 1960s life.
Mm-hmm.
But their parents' relationship ended when Cynthia was 9 and her sister Lori was 8. We actually are going to hear quite a bit about Cynthia from Lori.
Okay.
Now, while the divorce was hard, it actually gave some sort of finality to the parents' on-again, off-again relationship that had been going on their whole childhood, basically. Like most sibling sets, there were squabbles. Cynthia and her brother Mark would often fight, and Lori didn't often love sharing a room with Cynthia, who was often messy and unorganized. Plus, Lori often saw Cynthia as like the favored daughter of their dad. She's like, basically says their father doted on her, often spoiling her by just buying her whatever she wanted.
So Cynthia was cared for.
Yeah.
I mean, both girls probably, but
like
yeah.
Lori was like,
come on, Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Lori thought this kind of made her sister kind of careless about her things, maybe a bit unserious. And Cynthia wasn't much for academics. Like, she didn't do horribly, but she didn't study. And Lori said that Cynthia was smart, but she just wouldn't do her homework or put in any effort. She really preferred to socialize, and she liked to be the center of attention. She would laugh loudly. She was bubbly. She kind of wanted to be seen. By the time she was 16, she was driving a 1965 blue Mustang. Girl. Jealous. Which she would drive all of her friends around in. She would often drag Lori along, But mostly because Lori said that Cynthia would often run out of gas because she never would plan ahead, and Lori would be the one to pay for her gas.
So, and Lori's the little sister, right? And
Yes.
you're younger. So she's the sensible one.
Yeah.
And Cynthia's the wilder, free spirit girl.
Yeah.
Kind of? Is that?
Like, I think, like, Cynthia just kind of, you know, is a little unserious. I mean, I would say that is accurate, right? Like,
Maybe happy-go-lucky?
she doesn't really, like, plan ahead, you know, just kind of, like, one moment to the next.
And Lori is the
I'm responsible.
planner. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're very, like, different personalities. But after graduating Claremont High School, Cynthia's life starts to change. One of Cynthia's dreams was to get married and have a family. And before she even turned 20, she had met a man at a local bowling alley. They were married in 1979, and Cynthia wore her mother's wedding dress. But within months, the marriage was over. Shortly after, Cynthia met a man named Steve. Lori would later say, "I often wonder why we turned out so differently, but I knew all along we were different. Cindy always tried to help everybody. That sounds bad on my part, but if she went and bumped into two people and one was successful and the other was a complete loser, she would make friends with the complete loser so she could help them. I am the opposite. If I had a choice, I would pick the successful person and try to go up with him rather than start at the bottom of the underdog. Cindy would meet some loser and she'd say, I'm going to help this person. And she would do it."
It's kind of funny, isn't it? Because, I mean, a lot of people, I think, can get sorted into these two groups. Lori's onto something here.
Right.
I think, I mean, not to sound mean, but I think I'm a Lori. But not that I don't want to help other people. I want to help people, but I tend to shy away from anything that I perceive as, like, dangerous or difficult.
Yeah.
In that way. But then Cindy is like those big-hearted people that just want to kind of, like, help everyone who's struggling and pick them up. And I think that's a great quality to have too.
Yeah. So I guess, like, in my framework, it's like, who do we see as the underdog, right?
Right.
But yeah, like, she wants to just, like, help people, like, make their lives better.
Right. Yeah. And it is who do we see as the underdog? I mean,
Yeah.
right away I'm thinking of, like, being back in high school and, like, the troublemakers. Would I have wanted to help them as much? I would be too afraid of getting in trouble. But those other kids, I'd be like, okay, I can do this, you know?
Well, yeah, to me, if it's the underdog in terms of, like, the non-popular crowd, like,
Oh, that I can do.
that I can do.
The non-popular crowd, I can be there sticking up for the bullied kids. I can do all of that.
Right.
But I don't know about the kids that might be the ones doing the trouble. I would not have been that kid.
Right. So now Lori specifically is saying that Cynthia is looking to help out, in her words, losers. And in Lori's mind, Steve, the new guy, was one of those losers.
Okay. See, I guess I don't know what fits into that category. So that's the part where I'm like, wait, this word, I don't know. So Steve is what Lori would be like, okay, is one of the people she's helping.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, the first night that Cynthia brought Steve home to meet her mother, he excused himself to use the bathroom. And when he didn't come back out, Cynthia went and knocked on the door, worried about him, but he didn't respond. So, deeply concerned, she opens the door, and Steve is standing in the bathroom with a needle in his arm.
See, that's the kind of trouble I want to avoid.
Right. Now, Cynthia, though, like, instead of this being the red flag that is like, oh, nope.
But she's got this heart, I think.
Yep. Yeah. She continued their relationship. And soon, though, she was using too, though her family didn't know it. On the outside, Cynthia seemed okay. She was working as a waitress. She had her own apartment. There was no reason to suspect that she was using. But then Cynthia gave birth to a son, and the hospital actually had to separate Cynthia and her baby. Cynthia had hepatitis, so it was a health risk to keep them together. Lori began to suspect that her sister got hepatitis from drug use. Lori said, I felt pretty sure she was using drugs, but we didn't know for sure yet. She hadn't confessed to it, and she never did actually say it to my face, I am an addict. It was just kind of the thing you know, but you don't come out and say, I know you're an addict because I can see the tracks and you're not the same and you still owe me money. It was more, Cindy just looks at you and doesn't say anything, but she knows you know. And with that realization also came the realization that Cynthia's son now had two drug-addicted parents.
I was going to ask what happened to the baby.
Yeah. So actually, if I'm doing the math right, Cynthia's son and I are the same age.
Okay.
Now, Lori says she tried to help out. Steve and Cynthia were off again and on again. And so Lori let Cynthia stay with her and her husband at her home. But then things started to go downhill and Cynthia started to sell off her own belongings. Then she started to borrow money. It wasn't stealing exactly because Lori would give it to her, but Cynthia would never pay her back. Like her drug use, Cynthia's family couldn't exactly pinpoint when she started to do sex work. It helped pay for her drug habit and Steve's too. He'd often wait down the street for her to be done and then they'd split the money. And it was quite extensive too. Like, I actually don't know how much a drug habit costs, but it was like $700 a day.
Whoa, for real?
Mm-hmm.
How can anyone afford to do that?
Sex work.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, sometimes when Steve was in jail, Cynthia would get clean, but Lori says Steve actually wasn't supportive of her getting clean. If Cynthia was addicted, it meant that she'd be doing sex work in order to fund her habit and then his too. Off of it, Steve wouldn't have that source of income. But then Steve ended back up in jail and Cynthia was one of his only visitors, but the distance actually allows her to kind of work on herself. By 1984, Cynthia was focused on getting better, and so she started to work as a waitress. She and her son moved in with her mom, Linda. So things are looking up for her.
She is doing well, yeah.
Yeah. But behind all of it, Cynthia is actually keeping a secret. Like her friend Donna, 1984 had been a rough year for Cynthia. She had been arrested on June 26th for solicitation, and again on July 2nd for being under the influence. That's when she met Officer John Fung, who was a vice officer, and he made her an offer. They could go easy on her if she agreed to be an informant.
Okay.
Again, this is an offer that Cynthia can't refuse. So Fung would set Cynthia up to do drug buys, and she would arrange them, and then the cops would move forward with an arrest. But like Donna, the boundaries of the relationship between her and John Fung begin to blur. On September 10th, 1984, she wrote in her datebook, John called first time in 2 weeks, came over, talked 2 hours, headed for bedroom. Marky woke up from nap. Oh, well.
Okay. So it's becoming a relationship of sorts?
Yes, according to her diaries.
Okay.
And on September 13th, she wrote about making him 24 chocolate-covered strawberries.
So, like, if she's making the chocolate-covered strawberries, is she feeling like this is a relationship? Or is she just being nice?
Oh, yeah. So I think there are a lot of ways that Cynthia feels about him and some ways that he might feel about her.
Okay.
Because this is part of like the more the line is blurring.
Right. Like, is it like we're almost going into a relationship, it seems, if you're
doing like
first she's an informant and now they're sleeping together and then now
there's strawberries.
There's strawberries. Yeah.
Now, Cynthia's family, they actually met him.
Oh.
Yeah. So they've been introduced to this guy.
Okay.
And her mother said that she would actually hear Fung say he loved Cynthia when he dropped her off at the front door.
Oh. Okay, so it was going that way.
According to her mom, yes.
Okay.
Now, beyond being a romantic interest, Cynthia had actually to start to see Fung as sort of her savior. She wrote in her datebook that he was trying to help her overcome her drug habit. And according to Lori, it was working. The only reason she tried hard was for John, Lori said.
So there is something like love happening here.
Something is brewing.
Yes.
But Lori also sees the darker side of Fung's involvement with Cynthia. Cynthia would, she believed, start to lose her value as an informant if she actually did get clean and left sex work.
Okay. So it's these men in her life just don't want her to get clean.
Yeah, so, Cynthia says, like, he's helping her. But then, Lori, who I think is a little more cautious, I guess, more suspicious.
Maybe observant in a way. Yeah.
She's, like, questioning, hey, if my sister actually did get clean, right?
How would she be helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
So she says, he started using her as an informant, and once he started doing that, I think it's almost impossible to get out of it. So, like, what's the actual pathway out for her sister?
Okay.
By the fall of 1984, Cynthia is walking a precarious line, serving as an informant, having this clandestine relationship with a cop, and also trying to get sober. And like Donna before her, Cynthia gets charged with a minor crime, which is writing a bad check. But again, the police force has an offer for her. They can help her with her charge if she would just be willing to give up information to Internal Affairs about police corruption. And like Donna before her, Cynthia just can't say no. This is not an option for her. Now, the details on this are murky, but Lori said that Cynthia had told her about officers having sex with sex workers only to arrest them after. Basically, entrapment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this, likely this information that actually, is what Cynthia is giving to Internal Affairs in November.
Okay.
But within 3 months of doing this, Cynthia's gone.
Well, so she's been an informant for 3 months, and now that's when she disappears?
Well, so she gives them this information. It appears around November, late in the year, right, of 1985. And then she's missing by February.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Because on February 21st, 1986, Cynthia left her son at home with her mother, Linda, and headed out, she said, to see a movie. Now, apparently there was a call a few days later. She called her mom, but after that, there was nothing. When 5 days passed since she had left home, her family reported her missing to the San Diego Police Department. Not confident in the police response, Linda and Lori began their own search for Cynthia. They looked through her things. They found her Virginia Slim's date book that she'd been using as that small diary of sorts. And in it were Cynthia's notes about meeting up with John Fung, as well as a tally of how many days she'd been sober. So the note about, like, the strawberries, the note about...
Oh, so that's all in that Virginia Slim's notebook?
Yeah, so it's like, it's meant to be like a little, like, date book and not like a diary, but she was kind of like using it as like a little
diary.
Yeah. Now, I'm kind of in love with this Virginia. It's like a free giveaway, the cigarette Virginia Slim's date book. And for Lori, this like thin book is actually a new window into her sister's personality, because there among the notations were every anniversary and birthday of those that she loved. It reminded Lori of what she loved about her sister. Lori said, Cindy remembered everybody's birthday. She remembered dates that some people died, when people got engaged. I had an anniversary of the day I met my previous husband, September 20th, and every September 20th, she would call me up. That was like an anniversary in her mind. There's an anniversary when you met, when you got engaged, when you got married. A lot of the dates to remember, and she was like that.
So she just celebrated everything.
Yes.
Everything for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So she just sounds, it sounds so sad because like she kept trying and trying and trying to pull herself out of it.
Yeah.
And everybody just kept pushing her back down because it was to their advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So this amazing person is no longer with us, was no longer able to raise her son because other people had a use for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
It shows how unfair life can be, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it is abundantly clear that Cynthia cared so deeply about those around her, and her family, like, they feel the same way about her. Mm-hmm. Lori and Linda, they start driving up and down El Cajon for weeks, hoping against hope to see Lori out there working. But 6 weeks later, Cynthia's yellow Pontiac Sunbird was found in the parking lot of an El Torito restaurant in La Mesa, which is nearly 20 miles away. Inside was her purse with just $2 inside, a cigarette lighter, cosmetics, her jacket, and a newspaper dated February 22nd, the day after she left home. It was all the confirmation they needed to prove that something had happened to Cynthia. But both Linda and Lori hoped John Fung would help find Cynthia. But for a while, he seemed to be avoiding their calls. And when they did get through, he'd just say he didn't know where she was.
Okay. So they probably thought he was going to help, considering that it seemed like they were in love. Even if he was using her, they did seem to love each other.
Right. I mean, I think the thought here would be like, oh my God, our daughter knows this cop really well. Like, he will be a resource for us. He will help us find her, right?
Yeah. Did we ever... We keep talking about all these names, but we're not talking about, like, if there's any suspicion tied to, like, any of these individuals that we're talking about, Fung included.
Mm-hmm.
And is there ever going to be an answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like this is a very big story, right?
Right.
Yeah, many moving parts. So yes, we are going to get into
Will that be in episodes in the future?
Yes.
Okay, so right now we just have all these names, so it would be good for our listeners to kind of like listen to them boom, boom, boom if they can.
Yeah, I mean,
Remember that.
you know, they'll again stand alone, but here I really just want people to know, like, Donna and Cynthia.
Yes.
Now, when they're talking to John Fung and he's putting them off, like, the lack of compassion for Cynthia is shocking. Lori said, he just blew us off. He certainly didn't act interested. He was almost like, well, why would you ask me? Help us find her, we said to him. We asked him, where do you think she is? Because at first you think she's missing. What happened to her? But Fung's apathy strikes a darker chord with some of Cynthia's family members. Jay, who's Lori's husband, said, I find that extremely incriminating myself. If you are a police officer and if you've been hanging around with someone, whether it's been an affectionate relationship or some sort with a person, and you're a policeman and that person suddenly goes missing, you want to be interested. Anyone would be.
Right. That's the part where I was like, hey, wait, did we look into Fung?
Right.
Like those other guys earlier, I mean, you know, but this feels different because there's, you know, when you bring the word love into it, I think it changes how you think somebody should be reacting. Yeah.
Now, the similarities between Donna and Cynthia are hard to ignore, which is why I wanted to have them here together. Mm-hmm. Two women, both informants, both in relationships with members of the Vice Squad, both forced into reporting to internal affairs, both gone soon after. It had been clear no one intended for Donna's body to be found, but had someone done the same thing to Cynthia? But as Thomas Street of the San Diego Sheriff's Department began to dig into Donna's murder and Cynthia's family is scouring the city looking for her, danger was still lurking along El Cajon Boulevard and its alleyways. One by one, women disappeared. Like those before them, some were found murdered. Others disappeared entirely. By the end of the decade, over 40 women will have lost their lives.
Neon Lights Elegy. Cynthia Maine, 26, missing since February 21st, 1986, from San Diego, California. This is my hollowed-out city. The neon tendrils of light comet bright against the seam of my jeans. The wild animal gaze of girls as they startle. Quick flash red. As a man slips from an alley, dragging his hand along the wall. There's a cruelty to the morning crush at the bus stop, the shuffle beneath the hesitant sun. It's a fugitive beat of our hearts, the needle-sharp air in our lungs as we whisper, still here, to every woman we see. But the night still bleeds into the light. The water on our nightstands collecting dust on the still water, our own sweat-soaked sheets with fabric worn so thin, we can see the outline of the world through them. I still dream of the highway days, the wind whispering through my fingers. But my body knows the language of despair, the ache of waking here again.
Bye, Vanessa.
Bye, Amy.